Well, good afternoon and welcome to Northern Maine Productions. I'm going to do a little video here on how to accurately tell approximately how old your snapper rear engine rider lawnmower is. This is going to be kind of a little slideshow. I'm going to talk over the slideshow and kind of fill in the blanks for you guys. First of all, Snapper did not have specific model years for their rear engine riders. The models of Snapper mowers were built sometimes for several years in a row. They didn't change them at all. Just for instance, a Snapper 30081 was built from 1974 to 1978. They were all the same identical machine from 74 to 78. Now, in the 1970s, there was at least two different models that were built concurrent with one another. They overlapped by quite a while. Actually, the Series Zero mower was introduced in 1973. I think they made a 2650 and a 2680. And then they dropped it in 1974 and 75. 74 was when they came out with the Series 1. But in 1976, they brought back the Zero Series mowers and they made, I think, 25-inch, maybe 26-inch mowers and like 5 and 6 horsepower. Maybe 8 horsepower. I haven't got the chart right in front of me, but they made them all the way to 1979. They made them longer than the Series 1 machines were made. So it was kind of a weird time for snapper mowers in the 1970s. And in the early 70s, from 1967 to 1972, they built what was probably commonly known as the X models. You know, they were a 4-digit model number on those machines. The first 2 digits detonated the deck size, and the 3rd digit was the engine size. So you'd have like a 265X. They had a 308X or a 307X. Those were made from 1967 to 1972. They made various changes to those. Some years had certain horsepower motors and some years didn't. Prior to the X machines, they had an R model. Those were the very first true rear engine rider snappers. They resembled the more modern machines that most of us are used to, but they were vastly different. I'll put some pictures of one that I found on here. They were like, let me see, they had a 265R, I believe, and then a 264R. And I think that I even saw a 418R, which was a 41-inch 2-blade deck with an 8 horsepower engine. But the drive system, I saw some pictures of a drive system apart on one of those R model machines, and they were very different. They actually had like a planetary drive in them. So I'll put some pictures here. We'll start with the R model machines and I'll work into the X model machines from the late 60s into the 70s, and I'll probably work my way up to like Series 5 or 6. I mean, those years will basically cover the classic rear engine riders that everybody likes to collect. There are several spotting features to some models. A lot of the parts on those machines from the 1970s all the way through the 80s were the same parts, but some models had specific things to them. Now, obviously, I can't go through like the different baggers and things like that because there really isn't any information. I do know that the early models, I think I've seen them with a transparent top on the bagger thing on the back of it, and they had like a white net or whatever that went in there that collected the leaves and debris. The later ones, of course, had a black ABS plastic lid on them. And I believe the earlier machines even had a transparent ductwork that went from the deck up into the bagger. Of course, the later ones in the 80s had black ABS plastic ductwork. So hang with me here, and I'll try to keep this as short as I can. I don't want to bore you guys to death with this, so uh, hang right on. All right, so the very first machine here is the oldest. It's an ST series. These machines were manufactured from 1958 to 1962. Had an ST22RM, which was a 3 horsepower 22-inch deck, and an ST27RM, which was a 6 horsepower 27-inch deck. Both of those were manufactured from 58 to 62. Doesn't really resemble anything we've seen in more modern times. This is pretty old technology. Basically, it's a push mower with a seat on it. So that's a pretty interesting looking thing. I'd actually like to see one of them. I've never seen one. So moving on. All right. So here's the R model snapper. These were produced in 1963 until 1966. They were available with a 26, a 30, or a 41-inch deck. Take note of how different the footboard is on it and how much different the deck looks on this. They had a pan seat on them and very small engines. They only had up to an 8 horsepower engine on these machines. If you see one of them, you'd never mistake it for anything different, that's for sure. These things are pretty rare. You don't see them very often. I've never seen one of them. I've seen a lot of snapper lawnmowers in my lifetime, but well, anyways, I guess we need to move on to the X models. All right, so here we are with the X models. These machines came out in 1967. This is probably a pretty early one right here, this little Comet 26. That would probably be a 2650 or 265X, I'm sorry. These were available with 26, 30, and 41-inch decks on them. Available from 5 horsepower, 6 horsepower, 8 horsepower, 7 horsepower. They were manufactured until 1972. The earlier models of these had that flat pan seat on them like you see. They had a metal gas tank mounted to the side of the engine, and they had the metal hoop handlebars on them. And I think the narrow tires are another spotting feature of these. Now, this one that's pictured here probably had red hubcaps on it when it was new. Sometimes things changed on these over the years. The gas tanks became plastic by the early 1970s, and the engine options changed and whatnot. But you also notice that the deck height adjustment is on the right hand side of the deck. That was a common spotting feature to X models. So other than that, they were kind of the same. The throttle would have been on the headstock under the handlebars. So we'll move on to the new. All right, here we are with what appears to be a Snapper 2680. This will be an 8 horsepower, 26-inch machine, 1973. This one would still have the metal hoop handlebars on it. It has a more modern seat on it. That one has the 8 horsepower Briggs on it, and it will have the side mounted plastic gas tank over on the left hand side. You'll also notice that the deck height adjustment lever is still on the right side, which was a bad design because it interferes with the shifter if you happen to have your hand on the shifter. The hand grips are white on this, and I believe another spotting feature of these early machines is they had 4 lug wheels on the rear. Now I had a 2650 here that would have been around in 1973, and that one had narrow tires on the rear of it. So apparently they were available either way. Now by this time they may have been putting recycler decks on them too. Can't say that I've ever seen one, but right around sometime in the 70s they started using recycler decks too. I guess you also notice that they carried on with using the Comet name on the headstock right below the handlebars. The throttle's still on the headstock. The key switch is underneath the seat on these models. These are almost identical to a 3081, to be honest with you. They only changed a very few things on the 3081. And we'll look at that here again in just a second. All right, here is the Snapper 3081. Lots of revisions to this from Series 0. The deck height lever is now on the left side of the deck. The engagement handle design has been changed to the more modern design. This machine now has bicycle style handlebars on it. The gas tank on the left rear quarter is now plastic. It still retains the Comet name on the headstock. The throttle is still on the headstock. The key switch is underneath of the seat. This machine now had 3 lug wheels on the rear instead of 4. It did not have an easy engagement clutch on it. Series 0 and Series 1 machines also had 2 pedals on them, one for the clutch and one for an auxiliary brake. The hand grips have been transitioned to black instead of white now. The hubcaps were changed to black. So there's lots of little tiny features here that have changed a lot between Series 0 and Series 1. They still did not have the black protection in the center of the handlebars like the newer machines had, and mechanically it's basically the same. These were made from 1974 until 1978, and I believe in 77 or 78 they started putting a metal red painted cover on the deck just before they transitioned to the black plastic ones. So with that, we're going to move on to the next series, which is either going to be a model of the Series 2 or Series 3. So hang right with me here. All right. There was only one Series 2 machine, and I don't have a picture of one. Series 2 was a 2652 made between 1975 and 78. The machine pictured here is a Series 3 machine that was all new for 1979. This was the year that they moved the gas tank up behind the seat. It was also the year that they started putting the plastic covers on the deck. Other than that, not much else is different between that machine and a Series 1 machine. The deck hanger is a little bit different there on the back side of the deck. They actually built a framework, made the chains longer, and made them adjustable. Other than that, there is really not much different. The labeling changed. This was the year they took the Comet name off of the headstock. The throttle control is also beside the seat on top of the lift, the the deck hanger bracket. It's on the left side. The key switch is moved to the headstock now, and there's actually a starter push button underneath the seat where the key was previously, if you have electric start. Other than that, they're not much different. They are pretty much exactly the same machine. In fact, they are identical mechanically. I think this was the year also that they added an extra digit to the model number to accommodate the larger engine sizes, 10 and 11, 10 horsepower, maybe 11 horsepower, I'm not sure. But yeah, so 30083, they were probably not super common, but I've seen a few of them, but not too many. The later machines were a lot more common when I was working on these. We'll move on to Series 4. This Series 3 was made from 79 to 82. So I was not able to capture an image of a Series 4 machine. They were made from 83 and 84. Starting in 1985, they came out with Series 5. Not too many changes, but it was around that time that the recycler deck started becoming very popular. And that was the time frame when they added the ABS or automatic blade stop controls to the deck, which had the foot pedals you had to step on to keep the blades engaged. Series 6 was basically a holdover from Series 5, except that the Series 6 machine lost the auxiliary brake pedal. Series 7 machines, I believe, were the year that was the time frame that they came out with the square center tube. The names on them was like SR whatever. And that's not the scope of this video. I'm just sticking with the more classic looking ones. As you can see on the Series 5 machine, they have added the plastic protector in the center of the handlebars. So if you hit your head on that, you wouldn't cut your head or whatnot, not on those sharp edges that were on there where that was folded over. Series 5 was also the year that they put the round shifter knob on the shifter. I can't think of any other, they started getting larger engines by this time frame. 10 and 11 and 12 horsepower engines were not uncommon. extra tough became an option on these machines, which the extra tough added a solid sleeve underneath the seat where the center bar attaches. It also gave you roller bearings in the rear axle instead of bushings, and usually the extra tough machines had an industrial commercial engine on them also. But really, was not a lot of difference between from Series 3 forward. There was not a lot of changes in these machines until they come out with the square tube versions in, I think, 1989. Series 5 was made in 85 and 86. Series 6 was made in 86 through 87 or 8. So that's pretty much the time frame that I wanted to cover in this. Just remember, if you've got your model number, I'm going to post a link to a chart that'll give you the years that every single model number was made. I'll post it in the comments section or down in the video description of this video. Um, Basically, the model number is your best friend. If you could find the model number, you can date your machine approximately to the right era. And there's also, there's also some visual cues too. Series 3 or Series 4 was the end of the arched fenders back there by the engine too. They were cut off and flat after Series 4, I believe. So I hope this helped you guys out, and I hope you enjoyed this. So I just wanted to step in here for a second and kind of clarify. I get I get confused between when I'm saying model or series sometimes, like I just did in my description. Now you have to understand that on snapper rear engine riders, there were several series over the years. Um, what happens is, like, say if we got a Series 0 machine that was made in the 1970s, there were several models that fell under a Series 0. There was, 26-inch models, there were 30-inch models, probably 25-inch models, and 41-inch models. And the same went for every individual series. Um, so if you hear me get confused between when I say model or series, that's what I meant. I mean, the model numbers fell under the series. Um, I put this chart together right here just to kind of break it down a little bit. You can pause the video here and inspect this chart. This is, to the best of my ability, this kind of breaks down what the model number was. The model number was basically the blueprint of your machine. Um, the model number has the deck size, the engine size, the series number, and options, whether it had extra tough or whether it had a Wisconsin or a Tecumseh engine or a Briggs & Stratton engine, and whether it had electric start or not. And there probably was some other things on there too that are not really well known to me. I don't even know what the letter designations were for optional engines, and I can't find out online at all. Just for instance, I have a 3081 machine that was built in 1975. The model number on that machine is technically 3081WS. So it's a 30-inch deck. It's an 8 horsepower engine. It's a Series 1 machine. I have no idea what was on that for an engine originally. I believe it was probably a Tecumseh engine or a Wisconsin engine. And it had electric start from the factory. So that's all I can tell you about it. I don't know anything else, but